Hi everybody, welcome to Online Teaching Conferences 2014. The name of our session today is 10 Best Practices for Teaching Online. This is just a copy and paste of what you got from your program. I put that in there just to make sure you know that what you're here for. And then this is who I am down there. My contact information is right there. And it's also on the last slide. If you have a question that we don't get a chance to get to today, I will be happy to answer that via email. Thank you. I was wondering why that was falling off the screen. Okay, I want to first tell you my source for all of this information. I didn't come up with any of it, but Judith Boettcher or Boettcher came up with everything. And there's two different resources up here that you can get. On this left-hand side is actually the book. It's a roughly 300-page book that is called the Online Teaching Survival Guide. Over here is a quick and dirty little survival guide that she made 10 best practices for teaching online. That's the quick guide. So the right-hand side is like your quick start when you get software, and the left-hand side is like the reference manual that has it all. I would highly recommend getting a chance to at least go to that link over there and getting the 2-page document that you can quickly and easily read. That's what we're going to be focusing on today, are those 10 things. In this book, the Online Teaching Survival Guide, the 10 best things is about maybe only 1/4 of what's in that book, and it goes into so much more. So I wanted to let you know there's a lot of great resources at your fingertips. By the way, for those of you who are wondering where that is, in case you're not writing this down fast enough, this is posted in the OTC portal. This entire slideshow is posted there. You don't have to worry about taking notes. I broke every PowerPoint rule and put tons of data on each screen. So I don't do a lot of pictures. I do a lot of data, and that's probably because I'm an accountant. So let's apologize in advance for that. So if you want any of this data that's going to be on these slides, it is already posted in the OTC portal, so you don't have to worry about your note taking. It makes it a little bit easier on you for that. So let me check in where are the clickers at. Okay, great. So everybody that has a clicker, the black one is actually not one, sorry. So all of you have a white clicker that has a number on it. So what we're going to see is how this works. First we're going to see who's here. This is my question. Are you currently teaching an online course? And you should be able to answer A, B, or C. We do have, like I said, so much technology. And so we're going to ditch the clickers because I was going to try it and it didn't work. So just make sure you'll stick them in your pocket. That's my only request. Make sure you get them to me on the way out. So let's just do a quick show of hands. So how many of you would say A, I extensively teach online? Okay, how many would say B, you barely teach online? And then how many say C, no, I don't teach online probably yet, otherwise you're here. Pretty even distribution in here. So I'm hoping that those of you who are brand new, you're going to get so much full from this seminar, these 2 days. You're going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. A recommendation to you, I've been coming to these conferences for roughly 5 years. I started teaching 8 years ago online. My first couple of OTC conferences, I felt like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. How am I going to do it all? My suggestion is you can't, don't try. Just pick a couple things. Pick the 2 most favorite things that you think are going to be the things you want to do it, because I don't want you to overwhelm yourself. Those of you that are up here extensively teaching or you've started teaching, this is hopefully going to provide a list for you that you might know a little bit about, and you're going to learn a little bit more maybe that you don't already know, or maybe you already know this stuff and you're going to be leaving this going, sweet, I'm 10 for 10. So one of those categories are going to work for you. Let's start off with the first best practice. Number 1, be present at the course site. Now this is in here not only because our students don't want to feel abandoned, but it's actually law. You guys have heard of Title V? Title V is the law that tells us teachers what we have to do, and part of Title V is we have to have regular contact with them. So it means you have to be there. There's no set up the course before the beginning of the semester, a first day course, have fun, I'll give you grades in, not allowed to do that. And any student who signs up for a course like that would probably be so frustrated that they have no idea how they're doing along the way. So that's the number 1 thing, be present at the course site. A couple of ways that you can do that. The first thing at the top is really the how. How do you do that? Use liberally a lot of announcements, discussion board postings, and forums. Now we could spend an hour on that topic alone. In fact, the hour I just spent for the first session was on discussions next door. I see some familiar faces that were in that one. We spent a whole hour talking about discussions, and last year my whole hour was on discussions and we needed 2 more. So there's so much more to talk about with discussions. So that's probably, if I was going to pick one thing, that would be it, would be discussions, because your students know that you're reading what they have to say, they're giving some feedback, you can see where they're at. That's one of the reasons I use clickers in my on-campus classes, as I need to know, are my students getting it? Do they understand what's going on? I need to hear from them. Well, they need to hear from us too. And the discussion board is going to be a two-way street. We're going to have a little bit more in one of the other best practices that focuses a little bit more on discussion specifically. Now, as far as announcements are concerned, the frequency of that is up to you, but I'm going to jump down to this bottom bullet point to let you know that this is what the students say. The best online faculty, according to students, are faculty who show their presence multiple times a week, at best daily. Did you hear that? Daily. They want you in there every day. Is that reasonable? Maybe, and that's something that another best practice that we're going to talk about is you need to let them know what that's going to be. What is it going to be for you? How often can they expect you to be in there? The second bullet point, they want to know that you care. They want you to know who they are. Part of the discussion board could do that for you. I always do an introduction in week 1 and ask them a little bit about themselves. And I answer those too, because it's only fair if I ask them those things that I answer it too. And they want to know who I am because they want to trust me. Front page of my syllabus has a whole column all about me. Here's to you professors. I tell them things that I also told you in the program if you saw it, that I go down to Mexico for church ministry all the time, and I'm a competitive West Coast swing and two-step dancer. And they're like, I would have never known that if you didn't tell me that. So our students want to get to know us, that we're real people. And if we have an event to go to on a weekend, like if I'm down in Mexico for the weekend, I'm not putting on roaming to answer my students' discussion boards. I'll tell them, hey, I'm going to Mexico this weekend. I'll get back to you on Monday. I need to let them know that. And that plays into a lot of our other best practices as well. Here's a question for our online community. They can answer A, B, C, D, and this is a question we can just, again, by raise by hand, since my clicker experiment didn't work. How many times per week should we tell our students to expect us to be active online? So look at those answers, and I'll ask you to answer one at a time. Clarifying question?
What do you mean by active? Going in and creating something, or actually making something?
Any one of those things in that previous slide, announcements, discussion boards, forums, they need to know that you're there. It could be answering discussion boards. Maybe you go in twice a week to answer discussion board, maybe you go daily. You might notice in choice C, D, they both say once a day. The difference is the weekends. I tell my students they take the weekends off because I'm pretty active in either my church or dancing or going out to Mexico for building houses, whatever it is. I'm gone a lot, but I'm also about 50-50. So I'll tell them in my syllabus that I'm not going to be there on the weekend, but honestly, I'm in there a lot. So what do you think we should tell them? How many of you say A? 1 to 2 times a week you'll hear from me. How many of you say B? 3 to 4 times a week? Okay, it looks like about half of you. C, once a day, Monday through Friday. Okay, about 5 of you. And D, once a day, including weekends. About 5 of you for that too. So pretty evenly spread, except for B. B, a lot of people like B. What did my online community say? Okay, so they like D. They like to get in there every single day. And this is going to be whatever works best for you. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. Don't tell them that you're going to be in there every single day, including weekends, and then you're in there once or twice a week. You'll set them up for disappointment. If you're going to guess towards letter A. Say I'll be in there at least twice a week, and then you can be in more often. That's why in my syllabus I tell them, actually I'm more a B. I tell them that I'm going to be in there within 24 to 48 hours business days, which is kind of close to what B is. And I tell them business days means Monday through Friday, because a lot of them don't know what that means either. And I'm still in there on the weekends a lot too. So just make sure that you let them know what to expect, and make sure you either meet or exceed their expectations. We'll talk about expectations a little bit more. Best practice number 2, create a supportive online community. And this is where discussion boards come in a lot. And The way I set up my discussion boards includes 2 out of these 3 pieces. You may have heard about presence in the classroom, and these 3 areas, you'll see this in a ton of teaching theory. Number 1 is faculty to student. So this is they are hearing from you, the teacher. It could be through mini lectures in text or video or audio podcasts, and also have reminder announcements. So they are hearing from you. That's number 1. Number 2 is student to student, and I believe that's the most important one, and you'll hear that probably in some other seminars today as well this weekend. For example, personal introduction, which I mentioned, an open student forum for students, and also some small groups. We'll talk about some groups a little bit more later. The student-to-student sharing is really where the energy happens. They already know that they're going to hear from you, but when they're hearing from each other, it's almost like it becomes real. They might say the same exact thing that I said, but then when the student says it, they're like, oh, light bulb moment. They finally got it when somebody else said it. And really, it's oftentimes because it's just different wording. I might say it that sounds one way and the student says another way, and they might hear it 5 different ways from 5 different people on the discussion board until they get their light bulb moment. But when they hear something over and over and over again, especially from their peers because they're speaking in non-tech lingo, then that's when the light bulb moments happen. There's definitely a lot of questions about how much, as a professor, do we interject into the student-to-student forum or whatever that looks like, discussion board usually. And it goes back to best practice number 1, your presence must be known. I believe if you were to interrupt them too much, you will derail the student-to-student conversation. But it's important that you monitor it. It's important you make sure that no one is being derogatory, that no one is being bullied, and maybe steer someone a different direction if they're just completely off base on a particular discussion topic. So monitor it and get in there every once in a while and say something, but just don't derail it by putting someone down or telling them they did something wrong in front of the whole class. Just like you wouldn't do in a face-to-face class. You might pull someone aside in a face-to-face class. Same thing with the discussion board and online community. You can send them a private message and let them know something that maybe they need to do differently to help steer them. Do we have any questions on that online? Okay, I'll just let you interrupt me. How about that? Okay, just like you guys, if you want to interrupt me, feel free. And then lastly, the student to resource, and that one is pretty obvious. That's going to be their textbook, whatever mostly the publisher provides if you're using a publisher-provided book. So that one's the obvious one. And the first 2 are the ones we need to make sure that we hear from them and them from us. Best practice number 3, develop expectations for you and your students. And I talked about this one a little bit earlier. We need to be very clear in communicating what our students are going to expect from us. So here's a couple things to think about. How will you communicate? Do you prefer email? Do you prefer messages on the discussion board? Do you prefer private messages within your learning management system? So the how is pretty important. You'll need to make sure you provide them with all that information. How much time students should be working on the course each week. I have this on page 1 of my syllabus. You will spend X number of hours in this class, and it's different depending on the number of units in my class. I tell my students also on page 1 all the different ways that I will let them communicate with me. I don't give them my home phone number, but I have discovered a really cool tool that I want to share with you called Google Voice. How many of you have heard of Google Voice before? Okay, a couple of you in the room. Google it, for those of you who have not heard of it. But here's why I really like this tool. I don't want to give them my cell phone number so that they interrupt me at any time, but I do want to give them a means to text me because that's how our millennials like to communicate. They like to communicate via text, and their grammar's horrific. So just know that. I give them a Google Voice number. What a Google Voice number is a fake phone number that goes to an email account, and I actually have it go to my phone just like all the rest of my email goes. And so if I am in between different things, I can go check it like I would check email. And I check it just like a regular email account. And when I reply to that email, it goes back to the phone that they texted me from. So I get to be uninterrupted and they get to be texting. It's kind of a win-win situation. So that's one of the options that I give them on how will you communicate. I tell them, if you want to email me, here's my email. If you want to send me a message in Blackboard, you can do that. If you want to discuss in Blackboard, I have a forum set up for that, a discussion forum set up to talk to the teacher, get help from the teacher is what I call it. Or if you want to text me, here's a phone number, and they think they're getting my cell phone number. And by the way, they can call it and leave a voicemail, and Google Voice will record their voice and transcribe it, but the transcription is pretty bad. I've always had to listen to it going, what was that? But it gives me opportunity to call them back or text them back. and I don't actually, they never see my phone number. So I really like that way. It's worked for me quite well in the last year. I've been using that. The number 3 bullet point, when you will be present and when you will not. We talked about that earlier. Are you going to be available Monday through Friday except weekends? Is it going to be 1 to 2 times a week, 3 to 4? Just let them know. And for the most part, stick to it, but I'm going to jump down to this last bullet point. The response time within 24 hours a week, that's an example, that can easily be modified. So my syllabus is 24 to 48, and most teachers that I have heard say 24 hours is pretty standard. I think it's not officially standard, but that's kind of what people go by. But I wanted to say it can be easily modified in there, and one of the things that our expert, Judith Boettcher, goes into is that if you tell students, hey, my mom went in the hospital, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get back to you for 3 days. I want to acknowledge the receipt of your message, but I'm not going to be able to answer your question. They're very thankful and appreciative if you're just real with them. Sometimes they forget that we have lives, and we need to remind them. I have a life too, and I would love to get back to you, but right now I've got this family emergency situation, whatever it happens to be. So just be real and honest with your students. They're real people, and they'll remember that we're real people too, if we just tell them that. So you might need to modify that. There's sometimes the day before a test for me, I'll just get flooded with questions via email. And I'll go through and I'll see which ones are the test is tomorrow related. And a lot of the other ones, I'll say, I got your email, I'll get back to you in another day or another 2 days based on how flooded I got with emails. And they appreciate having acknowledged, and it also saves them sending 2 more emails between the time I receive their email and the time I don't respond to them in the next 24 hours, because they think if they don't hear from me within 12 hours, I must not have received it, and they'll send it again. So it saves those duplicate emails if I just let them know, I got your email, and I'm going to get back to you in another 1 or 2 days. Please be patient with me, whatever the story is. So that's important. The one I skipped, I want to come back to, setting regular times can be invaluable. And this could be in a number of ways. If you tell them I will be available every Monday, Wednesday, Friday in afternoon, so if they're wanting to catch you like when you're available, it's almost like virtual office hours. If you could have virtual office hours, that would be awesome. But if you at least let them know, if you want to catch me and not have to wait 2 days, this is when I'll be online. If you want to send me an email, this is when you're going to hear back from me. Generally, when they text me through Google Voice, they expect a quicker response. And so if I don't respond back in an hour or 2, I'll probably get a duplicate text. But that's okay. I tend to know those are urgent, and I'll give them really short answers back sometimes too, because they're expecting text lingo. I don't write you instead of YOU, and I use capitalization. Thankfully, I do it all on my iPhone, and Siri does all the capitalization for me. In case you have an iPhone, you can just talk to it. That's one thing I like about answering the text through Google Voice, and because I have an iPhone, it does that for me. My husband has an Android, and I think he can talk into it too, but he doesn't know how to use it. Anybody with an Android want to confirm or deny? Okay, so iPhone and Androids both, you can talk into it and answer all your students' text. And I do them at stoplights a lot, to be honest with you, just to get it done and get an answer to them. They want to hear from me. So if you tell them regular times, that would be great. Question?
When you just talk back on your phone, it just automatically goes, it's not sent from your phone number, it's sent from your voice.
Exactly.
So even though you directly send it back from your phone, it sends it, it saves you a different number.
The question for the online community was, do they see your phone number when I respond on Google Voice? The answer is no, they don't see it. It just goes back to them, and it looks like a text from the phone number they texted. And I tested this out with me and my husband just to make sure they weren't getting my phone number. It responds like email. So the only reason it's even going to my phone is because I've set up all emails to go to my phone. So I can be on my computer and also answering their text messages on my computer just like email. It looks just like email. That's a good point. As far as your data is concerned, it doesn't count as a text message. It counts as data download, and this is where if you have a limitation on your gigabytes, you'll need to keep that in mind and jump on Wi-Fi whenever you can. Like when I'm here, there's Wi-Fi. I'm jumping on it all the time to make sure that as those emails are coming and going, that that's not going to count against my limited gig. Question over here?
So some colleges and districts restrict your access to your emails. For example, you're only allowed to use your district email and your college email because of the liability issues when you have Google and it goes through Google and the student is complaining about something or subpoenaing the records. Not all my Google email is not something. How do you address that with students?
So the question from the online community is, some campuses might restrict to the campus email, so how do you deal with that? The only way that my campus has directly talked about that has to do with FERPA and keeping their grades private. So what they have told me is anything having to do with grades must be communicated through the school email, but if it's anything else, it's just like having a conversation with a student in the classroom, and it doesn't matter if there's any record of it or not. What matters is I don't tell anybody's grades through a Yahoo account or the Google Voice account. If they have a question about their grade, I will tell them, I'm sorry, I can't answer this through a public email. It must go through our school's private email. So I think it just depends on your district. If that's the case for you, it sounds like maybe Google Voice wouldn't be an option for you. So there are a couple questions. There was one here, then one here. So we'll go first and then back. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you sharing the grades through email?
I am sharing grades only. I'm sorry, the question was, are you sharing grades through emails? I'm only sharing grades through the email that is housed on the campus server. I will not share email grades on Yahoo or Gmail or any public type of account.
What's like, okay, we can't like guarantee that the one sending
if the student decides to give their login information, their username and password to their parent, that's on them.
we can't do that.
Okay, so it sounds like rules are different for you. She said she can't do this in her school. I keep forgetting to repeat the question. Sorry, online community. Okay, there was one more over here. Question?
I can appreciate the flexibility once these students offering up the discussion board, email, the messages, Blackboard messages that are all that. But from the monitor standpoint, on the other hand, the monitor all those forums and then you have multiple classes. How do you manage your time to be able to keep up with all those different messaging portals for all of them?
The question was, how do we manage all of those options we give our students? And that is the most time-consuming thing that I do in my class, is answer discussion boards, answer emails, answer their Google Voice questions. And in my opinion, it doesn't really matter if it's coming through line item 3 or line item 4 on my phone. I'm still getting messages. Or if it's coming through the discussion board. I do have to look at my phone or look at my email at home and log into my school campus email, answer those, go into my Google Voice, answer those, go into the discussion board for a class 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, answer all those. Yes, it is time consuming. And I have to allocate that time, and that is the most time consuming thing I do in my online courses other than the setup at the beginning of the semester. Okay, and especially grading the discussion boards too. Okay, I'll take one last question and move on because we're only on best practice number 3.
When you were talking about expectations in the class, are you talking about expectations of how much or how much time you expect to be online?
So the question was expectations for the student, how much they need to be online versus how much time they are going to be expected to do. My answer is both. In my syllabus, I break it down. This is the number of hours you're expected to be in class for my on-campus students. Therefore, my online students, that's how much I expect them to be into the video content that's provided. And also the discussions is what that would also entail. So I break it down for them. On the campus class, you have this much time for tests. On campus, or online, this much time for tests. And they add up to the same number. And that's something that I point out in week 1 for my online students to think that it's less time to take an online course. I let them know, no, you're going to be spending the same amount of time as the on-campus students, minus driving. That's the only difference. And so I put the expectation on day 1, and I break it down for them. Okay, I have a quick question for you before we go to the best practice number 4. So the question is, what is the best way to communicate expectations to students? And so this is your opinion. A, syllabus, B, weekly announcements, C, both, or D, other. And my online folks, if you can put your answer into the window, and for you guys, you can raise your hand what other might be. We'll get to you. So how many of you think A, syllabus? Okay, about 4. How many think B, weekly announcement? 1 person. C, both. Almost everybody. And D, other. What do you have for other? Email. Okay, is there any online community comments? 1, 8, 1, 2. Okay. Just to repeat that, she said that they do an online orientation on their campus, which I think is awesome. I wish I can force my students to do that online. What I do, because I can't make them go through an orientation, is I make videos and show them how to do everything. Oh, she said she does it as via letter, an orientation letter. Okay, great. She said, this is what we're going to expect. That's kind of my syllabus. That's what I tell them. I tell them the syllabus is a fancy school word for what you expect from me and what I expect from you. Because nobody heard the word syllabus till I got to college. At least I didn't. Okay, so best practice number 4. You ready? Use a variety of experiences as best practice number 4. And this is really because we're catering to so many different kinds of students. We want large group experience, small group experience, and individual work experiences. You're providing options. We want a variety. Some people are really going to excel by themselves. Some people are really going to excel in small groups. And we want to give them each an opportunity to excel in the area that might be best for them. It's effective with 1 or 2 or more fellow students. So those are your small groups. And depending on your class size, their groups are going to be different sizes, which we'll talk about coming up too. Some students are best on their own. We want to provide them with options. Sometimes they'll work together. Sometimes they will work individually. And it's really about a variety. Teams might be appropriate too. Now the way to facilitate that online is a whole another hour of class. I actually was going to do a separate presentation for that hour, probably going to get pushed off to next year. So setting up groups is going to be an important part of your class if you're teaching a class of 90 students. It's not going to be reasonable for all 90 students' comments to be read on the discussion board. So we want to give them something that doesn't feel overwhelming. My classes are 45 students, but because I teach accounting, the dropout rate is at least 50%, which is true for most math classes too. Math and accounting have the worst drop rates historically. So I might start out with 45 students, but probably by the drop deadline, 4 weeks into the classroom, it's already down to 30. And if I put them in groups, they tend to get, well, there's 3 people left, I have to redistribute. So I've kind of gone back and forth on how I do groups in my classes. I used to do 90 students in my class. I told my dean I'm not willing to do that anymore because it was too hard for me to manage all that. And I definitely had to use groups when I had 90 because it's just too overwhelming for them to do that. And I want to get your opinion on this one. This is my next question. What do you think is a good group size? Go ahead and read that, and I'll ask you for your answer in just a second. Probably is going to be depends. Is going to be your answer. For you, for whatever you're doing, because my topic is very technical. Some of you have a very non-technical topic, and bigger groups work for you. So how many for you? I would put this in the context of group discussions. Thanks for that clarification. So if you're going to have a group get together and have a discussion, which is what I believe is probably one of the most important components of having an online class, how many think A, 4 to 6 students? Okay, so a lot of you like it's small, about 10 of you. And B, 7 to 9 students? 5, 6 or 7 of you. How many of you like C, 10 to 15 students? Okay, we have about 10 or so of you. And D, I prefer not to use groups. Let the whole class be a group, and that might work for you. Some of you might only have a class of 20, 30 anyway, and that works for you. Okay. Now another big part of this is going to be what you require of your students, which we'll talk about in a second as well. Next, best practice.
Can I say that I selected C, 10 to 15 because about a third of the students don't.
That's a really good point. She said about a third of the students don't participate, and that's actually why with my class of 45 accounting students, that becomes 30 in about week 4, and only half of them participate. There's really only 15 students participating. So that's a good point. I used to break my groups into about 10 to 15, but because we have such a big drop rate and a lack of participation, there's like 4 students participating, and that's just not fun. That's for my subject anyway. They need to hear more opinions from more people. So I think it depends on what you're asking of your students. Question? Good point. She says she likes the small groups because fewer people escape by without doing anything. Yeah. One more comment? She's asking about how do you assign groups. This is sorry, I wish I would have had that other hour session for this because I was going to spend the whole time on that one. So I'll just briefly answer this. There are a couple different options. You can have them self-select, and it depends on your LMS, learning management system, of how you're going to do that. Or you can decide like A through G as a group and so on and so forth alphabetically. Or you can let them work on some things and decide to put a mix of high and low together, or put all of the high grading students together and all the low grading students together for a discussion board. The low grading students are all going to do nothing, so I wouldn't recommend that for that particular context. For projects, that might work because they're all going to have to do something to get a grade. So I think it depends on the context for that one as well. Okay, best practice number 5, use both synchronous and asynchronous activities. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, synchronous and asynchronous means, are they hearing it live right now? Like right now, our CCC Confer, they're watching it live, but some people that are here today in another class, because we ran out of room in here, will be watching this later. So those are 2 different options. Now, if you have the system capability of using something like CCC Confer, which if you're in a California community college, that's free. I don't know if you knew that. If you don't know about it, go check it out. It's pretty cool. You can do exactly what we're doing right now. You can be teaching your on-campus class, and it's being recorded for your online students. They can watch it live if they want to and participate, like we have a couple participants online right now, or they can watch it later. Now, I found this to be really helpful for my students who barely speak a lick of English. I happen to teach in a highly Vietnamese community. They call it Little Saigon in Orange County. And they are so afraid to say anything in class, and if I say something that they didn't understand, they're even afraid to raise their hand and say, would you repeat that? So I was doing full recordings of my lectures. I've changed it, which is a whole other hour, but they told me that they would watch it and they would rewind and rewind and hear it over and over and over again. So if you have the opportunity to record it and have it available for your students who have a difficulty with English, they have a chance to replay and rewind. A lot of my students will just come to class and record me, and some of them will even ask if they can record me. A lot of them don't. I just see their phone on the desk. Oh, I'm being recorded right now. A lot of my students who struggle with English do that too. So synchronous and asynchronous, if you can do it, a lot of it will have to do with what does your course management provide. If you can have a virtual live classroom like we're doing right here, then please take advantage of the opportunity. I'd recommend a headset as opposed to a microphone. I was using a headset in my class. I just want me to trip, thanks. I would recommend a headset. I was doing that where I would just put the headset on my neck. Otherwise it just kind of looks funny to the on-campus students. I would just rest on my neck and the little boom of the microphone would be right here. So that way the recording would pick up my voice. So that was super helpful. It's very time consuming to do something like a Camtasia, which is one opportunity to do that. And I've also taken a lot of workshops on making videos, and they don't tend to watch past 5 minutes. So this is a tangent on video making. If you want to make a quick 5-minute video, there are some free opportunities online to do that. Screencast-O-Matic is one of them. I just started using that one a little bit myself, and there's a handful of them out there as well. I think we even have a couple seminars on videos as well. So a little tangent on that one. Oh, Jing was the other one, J-I-N-G. Both of them are free, both of them are limited, but our students don't listen past the first 5 minutes. So try to condense your hour lecture into the 5-minute nuggets, and they'll listen to that, which is what I've learned over my experience of making videos. So I would say provide a variety, just like we talked about a variety of experiences. Provide a variety of opportunities for them to get the content, and the more opportunities you provide, again, more work, but the more opportunities you provide, the more likely the content is going to end up in their heads. A couple other points on here. More collaborative and more reflective activities, the more you can have them think about it. And this goes back to Bloom's taxonomy. You don't want them just to regurgitate information. That's boring. You want them to think about it. If you had an opportunity to take the discussion seminar that was the hour before this, he talked a lot about that. If you didn't, I'd recommend going to watch it. It was also recorded, like this session is being recorded. It was probably one of the best discussion board classes that I've been to, and I highly recommend it. And it goes into so much more of what this backbone is all about and the variety of discussions. Real-time interactive discussion, that's what we're doing a little bit online. Do we have anybody, by the way? Let's see anything over there? Okay. If you can do that, it's great. Now, honestly, in a classroom, when I'm doing this, if I'm going to be on the computer monitoring, it's a little bit harder, but I have done it. I also run some webinars where I am monitoring the chat discussion that's going on. And in a workshop that has 84 participants, it goes fast and it's really hard to monitor that. But when there's only a classroom of maybe 20, 30, 40 at the most, it's easy to monitor that over there because not everybody's talking at once. So if you can do real-time interactive discussion for our online students, it makes them feel like they're live and in the classroom. So it's pretty cool. some things that we really want to make sure we cover them. They need to think, they need to plan, they need to write and summarize better. So this is more of like their homework. So once again, we have a variety of things. So the interactive live is great, but then at other times they need to do all those other things too. So just think about your class. Does it include all that one? Some examples: real-time problem solving and question and answer review sessions. This is really great if you have an LMS that has a chat option on it. Or if you have the opportunity to use Google Hangout, which might be limited by your school. We talked about that. I've just recently been using Google Hangouts in the last year, and it's all video, and so it feels like you're live and in person. It does have a limitation of the number of people that you can include, but a Google Hangout might be an option for you to just have a kind of live office hours. I'm not sorry, live, but virtual office hours. So that's kind of a fun option to do that one. Any questions? Okay, just a quick time check. We only have about 5 to 10 minutes, and we're on best practice number 5. I knew that that was going to happen because I've done this before. We spent a lot of time on the first 4, and then the rest of them were pretty quick. We're done at, thank you. Okay, best practice number 6. Ask for early informal feedback. This was the one that I just put into practice this semester, so I'll tell you about that one. This is what you want to ask them. How is the course going? Do you have any suggestions? How many of you do end of semester evaluations? Raise your hand. Okay, about half of us in there. If you don't, I'd recommend that you do it not only at the end, but do it in the middle too. Because if we do it at the end, it's kind of too late to fix a problem that if we only knew about it in week 8, we could have fixed it. So we might need to be corrected. Maybe you don't realize that this particular thing that we're asking our students to do just isn't working. And so maybe we need to adjust our courses. Or maybe we're realizing that we didn't really explain this very well because a bunch of students just told me it's confusing. Or this tool that I'm spending 8 hours a week on providing for them, nobody uses it. I'm not doing that anymore. So there's definitely some value in getting that feedback mid-semester. I use SurveyMonkey. I do early feedback survey. What's working well? What might make it better? I use SurveyMonkey.com. It's free. I've been doing surveys for about 3 years now on SurveyMonkey, and I just keep adding more surveys. I keep copying them, revising them, and making them better, and learning more ways to squeeze in more than 10 questions because I'm learning how to do multi-part questions in there. So play around with SurveyMonkey. It's, you know, we like free, right? Because we know we can't squeeze any more money out of our campuses. At least that's the case for me. So I go to SurveyMonkey, and I send them the link, and if this is true for you, it's true for me. If you don't give them points, they won't do it. How many have experienced that? So I tell them extra credit. They're always asking for extra credit, right? I make it worth like 5 points, which is nothing in my 1,200-point course. But if they know they're going to get 5 points for doing it, they're going to do it. So I have them answer a mid-semester survey, and I also do an end-of-semester survey. And I haven't read my end-of-semester surveys from this last semester yet because it's a lot that I asked them to type in there. And they're more than happy to give me lots of feedback. And sometimes it hurts. Those of you who've been evaluated before, they might say some mean things and maybe some things we didn't realize we were doing that wasn't working, but at least it gives us a chance to correct it. So I like the early informal feedback because then I can correct it mid-semester. I made about 4 changes this past semester based on the mid-semester survey. I was like, oh, well, we can do this better and we can do this better. And I had a lot of students really appreciate that I heard them and I responded. And they were like, wow, she really does care about what we think. And they actually told me at the end of the semester they appreciated the mid-semester survey because it gave them the opportunity for their voice to be heard. So definitely check that out. We want to make any corrections and modifications if need be. Best practice number 7. This is a lot of what the discussion boards were talking about in that last session I was telling you about, that if you haven't gone, go listen to it. Best practice number 7, prepare discussion posts that invite responses. Our goal is we want them to ask questions, we want them to have discussions, we want them to have reflections, which is all deep thinking. We don't want just regurgitation of knowledge, that's boring. So we don't want to lead them down a boring path, so we don't want to post questions soliciting basic facts right out of the textbook, or what they can just Google and get the answer for, or for which there is an obvious yes or no. Because once the first person has answered that, what is the rest of the 44 students going to do? So we need to keep that in mind. And we need to be very thoughtful in the way that we ask our questions. So we need to use open-ended questions. If you have the type of content that allows for opinion, then ask them opinions. You're not going to get 45 of the same answers. You're going to get all kinds of different answers. And so it keeps it lively. It keeps it high energy instead of boring. We don't want to have boring discussions. We want to model good probing and follow-up questions. So this is telling them how to respond. And you could put all this in your syllabus, but I think if you have too much in the syllabus, it becomes overwhelming and they read nothing. And so I tend to put little bits and pieces of the syllabus at the front, and then I give them a lot more information through announcements throughout the semester to further expand on what I was wanting to get them to know. So for good probing and follow-up questions, this is about the responses from the student to student. So part of my requirement is to reply to 2 students when they read the discussions. And I don't want them to say, yeah, I agree. Okay, boring. I want them to go, that's a really good idea. Well, what about this? Or, well, I thought of it this way. Or some kind of follow-up question. So, and I want to model that for them, and I do it in the first 2 weeks. I show them what it looks like. And I go, okay, now you got it, right? Now you're going to do it all by yourself. And if they don't, I might need to chime in every once in a while. I'm always monitoring what they're saying. A couple of questions, first here and then here.
They have what's called Socratic dialogue, and I love using their concept of getting so with Mark telling us the grand telling me Socratic dialogue. And so I tell them they have to ask 2 questions that further the original poster's thinking about. So they have to really think about what they wrote and ask a question that makes that other person clarify further or explain further, which is exactly what you're saying, that they feel so impressed with themselves. Oh, this is Socratic dialogue.
Thank you for that feedback. I'll repeat that for our online community. She said that the word Socratic sounds like a big fancy word, and you can tell them to have Socratic feedback, which means that they're going to make the person think about it and further discussion. That is our goal. We want them to further the discussion. And you had a comment or question? Great question. Was how many pages is my syllabus and how do you get your students to read it? I just started using Microsoft Publisher, which makes my syllabus look like a magazine. And I have it as 7 pages. But it's kind of got a lot of pictures in it. I make it a little more appealing to the eye. And the way I make my students read it is using a syllabus quiz in week 1. We're 20 points, which is more than that mid-semester survey of 5 points. So the rule is if you make it points, they will do it. Kind of like what's that baseball movie? I lost it. If you build it, they will come. Thank you. There it is. Same concept. If you make it worth points, they'll do it. I've always lived by that rule, and it's worked for me. And I go, oh, why aren't they doing that? Oh, it's not worth points. That's why they're not doing it. So if you don't make reading the syllabus worth points, I don't think they're going to read it until they have an emergency situation and, oh, I missed a test, and then they care about what your testing policy is. At least they have a place to go back to it. I have in the front of my syllabus kind of like a frequently asked questions FAQ list so that it tells them where to find the answer. It's set up almost like a table of contents. So just a couple things about my syllabus. A couple more comments right here and then there. Question was, how often do I intervene in the discussion boards? That really depends on what's going on in the discussion boards, because I've had some classes that are not very active and they need a lot of hand-holding and a lot of help, and there's other students who just take the ball and roll with it and just don't need my help at all and very little redirection. And when I do redirection, if it's something that I need to tell them they're doing it wrong, I will send a private message. I want to do as much possible public praise. I want to tell them, great job, I like that answer. Or sometimes I'll give some good probing questions in there too. I would say they might hear from me only maybe if there's 20 posts, I'll get in there and let 3 or 4 of them. They just need to know I'm there every once in a while. And in my learning management system, which is Blackboard, it shows up as bright yellow. So they'll see me in there. So that's how I get in there. I didn't set myself, but I ended up being that way. I don't know if somebody else did it that way. Or I think it's like a bright yellow star. Like it's super obvious this is not a student. Okay, one more question in the back, and then, yeah.
Syllabus on Publisher isn't necessarily accessible to students too, as this is software. Do you consider it best practice to also file versions of your syllabus?
That's a great question. She was talking about accessibility regarding Microsoft Publisher. I actually don't provide the Publisher document to them. I make a PDF document out of it. And not tested the accessibility on that. I never even thought about that until right now. And now we have to go figure that out. Thanks for that to-do list. So is every PDF document accessible? Oh, there we go. Thanks for, you guys are awesome. Okay, one more question, then we'll move on.
I also send my kids private messages with something wrong, but I've gotten a complaint that if I don't publicly correct it, we don't realize it's wrong. We're just trying to learn from each other. So if somebody goes off on something that isn't really correct, and I don't publicly say, now that's not the right answer, this is the right answer, and then you must say,
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. She said for the online community, I'll repeat that, without public correction, students are afraid to trust other students' answers. That's a really good point. Here's how I do address that. And I tell them in my syllabus, if I see something that needs to be corrected, I will redirect. And so if it's something they specifically like, hey, your postage doesn't meet requirements, that's more of a personal thing. I'll send them a private message. But if someone just completely explained a concept wrong, I won't say, you're wrong, but I'll say, does anybody have any more feedback on this, or this needs some more feedback? And I give them a chance to correct each other, and most of the time they do because they're getting points for it. If nobody does correct it, I'll go in there at the last day and I will say, here is what I was looking for that particular topic. Or here's an answer, let me redirect you, here's what would be a more appropriate answer. So I agree with you on that one. Yeah. Okay, sorry, we got to move on because I have like 2 minutes to cover 8, 9, and 10. Okay. I didn't get to all those bullet points, but I think you guys probably had time to read that. Want to give your answer on this one? If they have to post one initial post and 2 replies, what do you think is a good set of deadlines? What do you want them to do, a Wednesday and a Friday, a Wednesday and a Saturday, a Tuesday and a Thursday, or a Tuesday and a Friday, or don't make it that rigid, just make it all do Sunday? How many think A? Wednesday and Friday. How many think B, Wednesday and Sunday? How many think C, Tuesday, Thursday? How many think D, Tuesday and Friday? And D, don't make it that rigid, all Sunday? Okay, we kind of like about 5 on every single one of them there, so pretty big mix on your opinions. An online question, what's that? I know we don't have time for that. Yeah, could you contact me via email? I would love to provide more on that, but just because I think we're out of time in 2 minutes. Is that right? What time is it? It's 3:12. Let me at least get you 8, 9, and 10. And these ones are quick because they're pretty obvious. So I like it that they're at the end. Use digital content resources. It must be accessible from their computers and mobile devices. Go test all of your stuff on a mobile device to see if it can be accessed. If you provide current news events, they like to know that what they're learning is real and not just made up stuff in school. You can get students help in finding. This is a really good discussion question actually for this last question online. Go find a video that describes this on YouTube. I'll bet you it's there. You guys would be amazed at what's on YouTube. And let your students go find it. Make your job easier. Assignments and discussions of how tools used. I don't have time to get into that because I want to show you these last 2. So just a couple of bullet points. Best practice number 9, use core concept, customized, and personalized learning. What that is a variety of things. I'll let you get a chance to read through those things. We need options and choices. We talked about that. We got to get them using, lots of choices down there. And last best practice number 10, plan a good closing activity for the course. Now this one I thought was really good. I didn't thought about until I saw it in this publication. Students are stressed. Let's help the stress at the end of the semester. Here's a to-do list. Here's what you need to do. Here's when it's due. Because a lot of them are so stressed out they can't even do that for themselves. They need a little bit of hand-holding. Remind them of what's due, what's next. Plan for reflection and integration of useful knowledge. What are they going to take away? That would be a great discussion question for the last week. What are you taking away from this course? Remind them of the core concepts. It's a good final exam review if you have a comprehensive final. And you might even have them put them in a student presentation or some kind of summary. So I know those last ones were really, really quick. But that's all the time we have, you guys. If you have more questions, please email me. And also evaluations, don't forget that one as well. Okay, I'll put my contact information up there. Thank you very much.